Welcome back to the Urban Pharmacy Podcast. Today I have an incredible guest. It is Kelly Ryerson, who studies glyphosate and helps consumers to be aware of this toxic chemical. And this podcast episode is going to hopefully open your eyes to a whole new world of protecting your health, not just through what you eat and what you put on your body, but also how your food is grown and potential exposure to chemicals that we definitely need to avoid, specifically in our food. So let me tell you more about Kelly. Kelly Ryerson works at the intersection of agriculture, nutrition, and health. She started the news site Glyphosate Facts, which explores and explains how our chemical agriculture system has led to an explosion in chronic disease. She collaborates with scientists, doctors, farmers, and companies to better address agrochemical damage to our soil and bodies. Kelly has a BA from Dartmouth College and an MBA from Stanford Graduate School of Business. She can be found on Instagram at Glyphosate Girl. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Here she is. Kelly Ryerson, welcome to the Urban Pharmacy Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I am thrilled that you are here and we are sharing time together because I found you on Instagram several months ago and I was like, what? Because your handle is called Glyphosate Girl. And I was like, wow. Somebody who's really dedicating like a whole handle to exposing the truth about glyphosate, like follow. So I hit the follow button and now we are here because this is something that I'm super passionate about and people might be wondering what in the world glyphosate even is. And we're going to talk all about that today. But before we get into that, Kelly, I would just love to know like who you are and what you do right now in your life.
Oh, sure. So let's see. I live in Northern California.
Okay.
I have been dedicating the last 6 years of my life to this one chemical, as you said, to glyphosate. And it's not something that I ever imagined. My background is actually in finance and business. And I ended up becoming really sick after I had my second child with like a chronic condition that no doctor really could figure out. So, really vague things, high autoimmune markers, but no specific autoimmune condition, like, eye problems, but not a specific eye problem, rashes, but who knew what might be causing them. And just the list was so long and I was so miserable. And doctors would try and help me. And so I saw about 20 doctors and I was on all kinds of drugs. I was on 2 different antidepressants because I thought maybe it was psychosomatic. I was on like an anxiety. I was on steroids for a while. I was on gabapentin and, acid reflux. Just the list of pharmaceuticals was getting really long and I was really desperate.
Wow.
And finally, when nothing was helping me and I was just getting sicker and sicker, I said, okay, I might be crazy. And so all these doctors are telling me it's in my head. So I went to see a psychiatrist who had some intake blood work for me. And he wasn't a functional psychiatrist. He just happened to have it. And he had a vitamin panel on it. The vitamin panel came back and I was extremely deficient across the board of all these key minerals and vitamins. I was like, well, do you think that this has something to do with it? And he's like, he's super Western. He's like, I mean, probably not. I don't even know why I put those on there. And so I went back to my primary care doctor, who, by the way, was trained at Stanford and Harvard. And I don't know why I was still trusting her at this point, but she said, no, those things, that's interesting, but it's not really going to be why you're feeling so horrible. And I was like, but I don't have any B12 and my D is a 0. And, like horrible. Like I had scurvy. I had no vitamin C. I mean, terrible, terrible.
Wow.
So then I ditched her and I found a new doctor. And in that process, she said, a lot of my clients, particularly women around your age, are finding a lot of help by going gluten-free. So, and this was almost like, this is now about probably 7 years ago. So there wasn't as much awareness about it. Mm-hmm. And so the selections, unfortunately, of food were more slim. But I didn't have celiac disease. And so I was like, well, I guess I'll try this, but I didn't really have much hope in it. And so I started resupplementing like all these vitamins I was missing, all on my own, no doctor should advise me on it.
Mhm.
And then gave up gluten and started to feel so much better. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank God. Like, it feels like a miracle when you start to heal after that, just desperation.
Yeah.
And I went to the Columbia University had a celiac and gluten sensitivity conference. And so I went to that because I wanted to learn firsthand from the scientists, okay, what's going on? Why are people sensitive to gluten?
Mhm.
And I went, and they were talking about the research. They said, if you sterilize gluten, that protein actually doesn't cause inflammation in the people that are gluten sensitive. So it must be something else that's in the protein that's causing this, or than the protein itself.
Mhm.
And so I went up to the microphone and I was like, do they spray any pesticides like Roundup on the grain? I mean, I don't know. I had absolutely no idea. And they were like, no. And the doctors turned around, they're like, they wouldn't spray. Why would they spray? That would kill it. And so then at this conference, the chief scientist for General Mills happened to be there, and he pulled me aside afterwards. And he's like, yeah, so the farmers do spray Roundup on the grain right before harvest. And we know that there's a problem there, but it's going to take 2 decades to change their behavior. And I was like, well, if that has anything to do with gluten sensitivity and like why so many people are getting sick, then in 2 decades, our species is going to be wiped out. Then 20 years of this is crazy, of having this step on our grains. And so glyphosate's the active ingredient in Roundup, and it just took off from that point on, when I just was like, oh, I've got to expose this. This is bad. Who knew?
Wow. And that was how many years ago?
So that was probably 7 or 8 years ago, I'm thinking.
We've got like, you're
Probably
yeah.
7.
We've got like 12 more years until people are going to really actually wake up to this.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to ban it from the United States, hopefully.
Right.
I mean, glyphosate, can you just explain? I just can go down the rabbit hole here. Can you explain again what it is? And it's not just used on wheat. Where is it found?
Yeah. So glyphosate is it's the active ingredient in the weed killer Roundup. So the weed killer that you see in Home Depot, and unfortunately Target, despite my best efforts to get it out of there. And it's interesting because so Monsanto is the company that brought it out as an herbicide. It was originally used, before Monsanto patented it as a weed killer, it was used to clean metal pipes, because it has this extraordinary ability to chelate minerals and bind minerals together. So you could do that inside with the residues of a metal pipe, and effectively clean out that pipe of those minerals. And that was okay, successful for the company that was doing that. But then Monsanto realized, oh wait, this has extremely promising herbicidal properties. We could definitely launch this as a weed killer. So in the mid 1970s, they launched it, and it came out. And so it's glyphosate is the active ingredient, plus this soapy substance, surfactant, that actually ends up being very toxic as well. And so they launched it, and it was used residentially. It was used, municipalities, and it was used sparingly in agriculture. And atrazine, actually, at the time, which is the second most used herbicide today, was the most used for a long time. Mm-hmm. But this was a very popular, very profitable product for Monsanto, and their patent was running out on it as an herbicide in 2000. And so they said, okay, how are we going to make sure that we're still profiting from this chemical? And let's think bigger. And so in 1996, they launched what's called genetically modified seeds, so GMOs. And why they put them together, and their the specific quality of them that made them so enticing to farmers, is that they were designed to be resistant to the use of Roundup. So a farmer can plant them, and the seeds will grow, and then they can spray over those crops as much Roundup as they want, and those crops won't die. So Monsanto sold these as a packet. So they sold, as a package. So you sell the seeds, but you have to buy their Roundup product. And so these are Roundup ready GMO seeds. So then the use of Roundup at that point exploded. And so you can look on the map of the United States on the use of this chemical. And just starting in 1996 through today, it's just absolutely insane how much has been used. And the now we have, it's 90% of our corn from this country is now genetically modified, Roundup ready. And the soy is something like 85%. So it really dominates our monocrop cultures in this country.
Mhm.
So you can see it. So anything, most of those GMOs, those Roundup drenched GMOs end up going to animal feed. Some go to, like when you're at the pump, when you're pumping your gas, you'll see like 10% ethanol. Well, that comes from GMO seeds. That's a biofuel. And then like a smaller percent, like less than 10% goes into foodstuffs. So those are the high fructose corn syrup and all kinds of nice toxic things that you can have in your food. So that's that part. That's the GMO portion, where 80% or more of our dietary exposure to glyphosate comes from is this practice of spraying crops just before it's time to harvest to make the harvest easier. So that's the case with our grains, with our wheat, oats. It actually happens with sugarcane, sugar beets, beans, potatoes. There are a lot of different crops that are sprayed just before harvest. And so when you think about that, it's crazy. It's like, okay, so the farmer's going out there, they're spraying it all, they harvest it, they send it straight to the mill sends it to the manufacturer, and we're all eating these massive residues of this weed killer glyphosate that has all kinds of health repercussions. Yeah. Because we're just a country that also eats lots of grain, and it's a major food staple. So that's like where most of the exposure comes from.
I didn't know it was on potatoes.
Yeah.
That stinks.
Doesn't it?
Sometimes sometimes I go through the Wendy's the Wendy's drive-through if I'm hungry. And I'm like anti-fast food all the time. But like if I'm hangry and starving and I don't want to wake my son up that's in the car, because I can't even go and buy fruit out of fast food, I will get like multiple baked potatoes. And sometimes if you're eating a non-organic potato, I'm sure it's fine. But like,
yeah,
that ruined the Wendy's experience.
It's so sad.
It's so sad. It's so sad. So what is the surfactant? Is the surfactant SLS? Like, what is this thing that's making it sticky?
So it's called POEA, and it's a really long chemical name. And it is, it's never really, so the EPA doesn't test combined chemicals. So they only will test the active ingredient in herbicide or pesticide. So Monsanto has said, now Monsanto is owned by Bayer, the pharmaceutical company. So Bayer will, they can present the evidence of the safety of glyphosate, which oftentimes they've actually ghostwritten those studies to support the safety of glyphosate, submit that to the EPA, and the EPA will look at that, but not at this other like soapy substance surfactant component. And meanwhile, the synergistic effects between the two are significant. And the POEA surfactant that we use in the United States is actually banned in Europe. So the European
is glyphosate banned in Europe?
No, what's interesting is I thought it was much more banned than it is, but it's actually used quite a bit on their agriculture. Which is too bad. Although actually Germany is trying to get rid of it, which is ironic because that is the home country of Bayer.
Wow.
So anyway, so POEA is outlawed there. It's really toxic. And so clearly the company can manufacture a version of it that's effective, that doesn't have POEA in it, but the United States is like, I'll go ahead, just spray it, it's fine. So we get dumped on even more. I mean, it is crazy because Stacey, like now at this point, when I see something that's like on the side of a package, it says made in the United States, I'm like, dang. Like, I don't think that means that it's healthier. It might be worse. Probably
I just did a Facebook Live about that.
Did you?
Just talking about how vegan doesn't always mean healthier. And, maybe maybe you don't. Like I'm a proponent, and I have been eating like whole plants for over a decade. Like this, it's like what I talk about a lot. Vegan doesn't always mean healthier. Okay. Like at all. Made in the USA doesn't always mean better. Like, you just brought a whole new light to that. And then I don't remember what other myth, but yeah, I just hit play and I was like, guys, like we have to wake up. So, okay. Why is glyphosate bad? Like what is it doing to human health? Especially like that's been proven. I mean, there's been a lot of theories, and you talked about the gluten thing, like, oh, maybe that was another thing. Like gluten-free doesn't always mean healthier, right? Like,
oh, not at all.
Not at all. Not at all. Because, and then now you're even making me wake up more, like, just because it says it's gluten-free doesn't mean that it's glyphosate-free.
No, in fact, it almost never is.
And that's why we just need to eat whole foods, guys.
That's it.
Whole foods. And I do want to talk to you about animals as well later, for those people who do want to choose to still consume them, and how to find, like, people need to understand that there's this chain. Okay. Like, and we need to be aware of where it's starting and then to the end product of what we're putting into our body. Like, it's so important. So these gluten-free products, like, could still contain glyphosate.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And I feel sad when I have to I'm standing staring at bread, and I'm like, wow, if I could tolerate gluten, I could get that organic wheat bread, and I can't. So I'm going to go and get this thing that's been sprayed with God knows what and has tons of gums,
right? And sugar and oil and excess sodium, like,
to make me sicker, but I mean, gotta live. So indeed I buy it,
bread. I mean,
terrible.
It's just so good. Okay. So what is glyphosate doing to us?
Well, so one of the things that it does is, and you may have noticed, at least maybe in ads on TV or what have you, that it's known to cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, for one. And that's what all of the recent Roundup lawsuits have been. And in fact, that's where I got my start, because when I first was interested in the glyphosate aspect of my illness, it was actually the time that the lawsuits were kicking off in San Francisco, which is where I am. And so I went and sat through all of those trials. And I learned, it was crazy, because I actually first went up to go and protest in San Francisco, Monsanto, because I was really mad. And then no one was there except for the lawyers. So I walked right into the courtroom and sat down. And it was like pretty crazy because, like, for example, I didn't know who Bobby Kennedy was. And he was there, one of the lawyers. So I sat down, he's like, I'm Robert Kennedy, I'm like,
oh my God.
It was like, I mean, this whole world was so new to me. And so I really got to know all the legal team and all the expert witnesses that came in, that were these toxicologists who were just like spilling out the very specific things that the EPA has deliberately overlooked, and just the corruption of Monsanto and getting this product on all of our food. So it was insanely fascinating and really a great experience. And that's actually the glyphosate girl handle started because I was sitting there, I was like, there's no one really reporting on this day to day. And so I decided I was going to blog on it. And so I called myself Glyphosate Girl, and then just wrote every day the trials of what was happening. And instead of Gossip Girl,
Oh, and yeah, I love it. It's so good. It's so good. And I'm sorry. Like, when I saw your handle, I was like, yes. Like, this is big. This is huge. This is needed. Okay. People will sprinkle in a little bit of information about glyphosate, but I don't think that any of us really understand the magnitude of what's going on here.
No, that is exactly right. I mean, I am always screaming from the rooftops that if you want to make the single largest impact to public health today, you ban the use of this. Like, that would be the most impactful thing, because a CDC study came out recently, showed 80% of Americans are walking around with this in their urine. Yeah. And so that is a lot. Like, that is a lot of people. I don't even know who the 20% are. That I'm
like, who are these? Like, Amish people that are growing, right? Like,
actually, maybe because they're big leaders in the regenerative movement.
Yeah. Before we get too far into this episode, I want to just remind you of the fact that on this podcast, you hear a lot about reducing our toxins in terms of our food and how to prevent cancer through nutrition and all of the things that really can lead to chronic illness. But what you might not be thinking a lot about is what you put on your skin on a daily basis. And that is why 7 years ago, I linked arms with a B corporation called Beautycounter, which is the pioneer in clean beauty. And we not only create high-performing, significantly safer products, but also advocate on Capitol Hill, nationwide, and even in Parliament in Canada to help get more health protective laws passed so that one day all products on the shelf will be safe. And what you may not know is that it's been over 80 years since a federal law has been passed to protect consumers, both in America and in Canada. They have a lot higher standards in Canada, but it's been over 80 years in America since we have actually put really stringent health protective laws on our personal care products. That includes body products, that includes makeup, your hair stuff, all the things that we're exposed to on a daily basis that we could easily swap out for safer. And right now, only 10% of American products have been tested for human health safety. And what we do know is that there are ingredients that are allowed in our personal care products right now that are linked to cancer, allergies, endocrine disruption, obesity, and more. That is not okay. So I invite you to make a safer swap today. I really encourage you to look at the labels that you have of your current products at home. Go to the EWG app, the Environmental Working Group, and get a rating on what's going on in your personal care. You want to stay below a 3 if you can at all. One of the biggest things that you can avoid is fragrance. That is a code word for over 3,500 chemicals that could be hiding in your personal care that are known to cause human health issues. So again, I invite you, make the switch, go to mybetterbeauty.com and shop for your new lipstick, shop for a clean foundation, shop for a nice and high performing body lotion that isn't going to cause you human health issues down the road. When it comes to environmental toxins, these things can accumulate in our fat tissues and within our cells, and we want to just reduce our exposure whenever we can. Switching to safer beauty is one of the easiest things that you can do. So again, go to mybetterbeauty.com or click below in the show notes to open up your whole new world of low tox living and remove the overwhelm and make sure that you find brands that you can trust, just like Beautycounter. If you need any help, I'm here as always to help you along your holistic living journey. All right, back to the show.
So anyway, the number of things that this causes, okay, and this is not me just making it up. This is in published independent research that is from outstanding scientists that there's like no controversy around, and they are not corrupt people. So endocrine disruption for one, so really messing with hormones. And alongside that, it has impact on reproduction, infertility. And one particularly scary note right now is that there was a study done on pregnant women, and the scientists studied, okay, what's the glyphosate content in their urine during the second trimester. Then they looked at the health of the babies, and those with the highest levels of glyphosate in their urine second trimester also had baby girl fetuses that had a lengthening of the distance between the vagina and the anus. And that means androgenization. So it's definitely in there messing with the genetics of the fetuses. And I know for sure that it goes into the placenta and in utero, because my daughter's baby teeth were formed in utero, and I sent one of her baby teeth when she lost it to the lab, and it came back positive for glyphosate.
Oh my God. So
this is like in our bodies and in our system and in our bones. So that is a significant issue. It crosses the blood testes barrier and kills sperm. It kills sperm prematurely. And it, it also impacts women's ability to conceive. It crosses the blood brain barrier, causing, and there are recent connections with Alzheimer's. And that's from dietary exposure. Like all of this that I'm talking about right now is dietary exposure. And it causes kidney disease. It causes fatty liver disease. And if you look and you see what the epidemic is in fatty liver disease, it's really insane. Even in children, it's just really tragically sad. And so but the big one to me anyway, which is where I really have been impacted, is the fact that glyphosate, when you eat it, it specifically kills good gut bacteria. And it is a patented antibiotic. It kills good gut bacteria. It does not kill the pathogenic gut bacteria. And so this is a recipe for enormous disaster, because now we know, and I'm sure your listeners know, just how absolutely vital the health of the microbiome is to our functioning of everything.
Yes.
Like it's like they're running our bodies down there. And so then you're eating this antibiotic every day. It's going down there and completely disrupting things. And and I don't know how much you guys talk about leaky gut, but it definitely contributes to that phenomenon, and then letting the toxins out into the bloodstream, and then, all the inflammation and autoimmunity that comes from that. And it's not just glyphosate. It just happens to be that glyphosate is this antibiotic, and it's just the most used pesticide in history. And we know that it's all over our food. So it's just really like a harrowing, large, we should be just, I wish that every single person in the world, and particularly in the countries that use it a lot, like we do in Canada, could just know this word glyphosate and just demand it not to be there, because the health, I genuinely think that if you looked at the health costs in this country, they would come rapidly down if we weren't exposed to this chemical every single day.
Yeah. Well, then there would be no customers.
Right. Then Baird makes no cash.
Right. So, okay. Organic. Okay. Well, I want to ask you about this new label. What do you think about this new label, certified glyphosate-free?
Oh, yeah. So I love that. I love that label. And I'm really excited to say that I know that they are overwhelmed with brands that are wanting to get that certification. And this is new, like this is since COVID. And I think that maybe people were able to take a pause and think about their health over COVID and just start questioning things more, because the awareness around glyphosate contamination is definitely ramping up. And I love that. So glyphosate residue free is a fantastic certification. The Real Organic Project is a great certification. USDA organic should also not have glyphosate in it, and occasionally you will see that it does. And actually there was recently some news that there's been some cheating of organic, but you do kind of wonder, like, I have a neighborhood store downtown, and sometimes I'm like, did they just choose this day to put organic sign on the oranges? I mean, who knew?
Oh,
who
yeah.
knows? There's just a lot of corruption in that, I guess, but you do the best you can.
Yeah. I mean, we are certified organic now at our farm for our produce that we sell at the farmer's market. And there is a lot that goes into it. But Kyle and I both agree, like there could be some more rigorous, like people should be showing up more often, checking us. Yeah. Like going through, making sure that we don't have anything on, and we're small from, I don't know. It's just, anyways, there is some standardized
ways, right?
Processing. What?
I feel like there are ways to, well, clearly, because they're going to try, maybe you'll get more visitors now. They're trying to crack down on the frauds, but.
Yeah, right. So, okay. GMOs, let's talk about that, because if something, I didn't know also that you're seeing that they're starting to see some glyphosate even in USDA organic. That's not good.
No.
So they're letting that slip by, or that just happens to be that they're testing it thereafter and seeing, oh, it's there.
Yeah, that's okay. How.
Got it.
Yeah, because you know what, you might have, for example, a huge rain, and then the water is contaminated.
It's like just, almost a persistent, like, it's just, how do we avoid this? Yeah. And as an organic farm, like we are surrounded by 2 fields of corn and soybeans.
Oh, are you?
So we have to keep our crops far away, really far away, taking away from our real estate, or taking away from our growing capacity, because we don't want to risk that contamination. We have other organic friends that have had the same issue. And like, sometimes even like when they go to spray, it will literally just wipe out their crop. Like it's so
unfair.
It's so sad. It's so sad. It's like, it's just so sad. It's like, the story of like you want the little guy to win so bad, and then they're just like just wiped out. It's just really sad. But anyways, so genetically modified, like if it says no GMO on the label, are we protected?
Yeah, so no GMO does not mean no glyphosate at all. And that is very strange, because you should feel, I look for things to be sure at least they're non-GMO, but it is no indicator to me in terms of what the pesticide level is on that. It could have truly everything, every bad pesticide possible on it. So, and there are other, and 2,4-D, atrazine, all these different organophosphates as well, like do regularly show up in food that's non-organic. And it could be not organic, but non-GMO, and still it could be there. So that's only so indicative. And my feeling is, I mean, there are lots of people that study just the health effects from GMOs, and it's not great at all. But that label is far from a catch-all for health, because the chemicals may be much more toxic than the GMO seed itself is.
Mm-hmm. So what do we need to look for if people are going to choose to buy packaged and processed foods of any sort, even if they're, just like bread, like, or cereal and stuff like that? Like what do they look for so that we can avoid as many harmful chemicals, specifically glyphosate, as we can?
So the main thing, and it's interesting because I would first, of course, say if it's USDA organic, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Like, get that one. That's not always available, particularly if you have dietary restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been interested because some things are not USDA, that are packaged foods, are not USDA certified organic. However, like if you look at the Simply products, sometimes on the back, if you decide to read the ingredients, you'll see that they're making a good effort. And you'll see that some of the ingredients that are in there, a lot of times the grain is organic. It's just not organic enough throughout all the product list. Right. So I try and do the best I can with that. The same is often true with gluten-free granolas. A lot of times I'm like, well, great. Well, they're probably drenched with glyphosate, but I'll look, I'm like, oh no, the oats actually are organic. It's just the other things that aren't. So you just kind of do the best that you can with that. But I've actually, I've been happily surprised. So there's some things I didn't think I should buy. And recently I'm like, oh, I think that that's okay.
Yeah, that's great.
So looking for that. And then, the glyphosate residue free is a fantastic one. I recently saw, what did I see it pop up on? Oh, so there were some gluten-free rolls. I was like, holy cow, they weren't organic, but it said glyphosate free. And I was
great.
So excited.
That's
so
great. That's really awesome. So tortillas, have you noticed that? Like, so, I mean, are you saying that like non-organic corn tortillas are likely covered in glyphosate?
So they may or may not be, because they're not likely made. In fact, I don't think any are made from GMO corn. And so, yes, they probably are. In fact, I read an article that some farmers were desiccating with corn with glyphosate. So I would say that's not great. Now, there's a huge controversy going on right now in Mexico, because Mexico has said, we will no longer be importing your GMO corn to the United States. And they also have said we're phasing out and banning Roundup. And they first announced that, I think, in 2021. And you can imagine the uproar that this is causing in our State Department. And they're like, we're going to give you economic pain if you do this. This is a huge export market for the United States. What are our farmers going to do? Meanwhile, a lot of American farmers are actually like, let's take this opportunity for the USDA to support us in not growing GMO corn. Let's go back to some native varieties, and then we can export at a higher price to Mexico, which they'd be happy to pay for,
Yeah.
And so I hope that they can hold strong. I mean, the pressure has been the United States is some huge bully when it comes to protecting our poison and making sure that they keep on buying it. Meanwhile, they're like, no, we see that it's really bad for human health. So that's going on. So I would say if it's a Mexican brand, then you should feel pretty good about it, because they don't want these chemicals and GMOs.
Fabulous. Good to know. Okay, this is good. Because I mean, I'm over here pressing my own freaking corn tortillas. Like, I'm at that rate. Like, I can't find, like, if it's just like you said with bread and stuff like that, like if it is organic, it has gums added. And when I'm not, like, while I'm not a purist, like, I went and got my hair highlighted yesterday. I know that's not, I know that's not ideal. Like, but I'm quite a purist when it comes to my food, and I would rather avoid the gums. And like, I can't find an organic corn tortilla that doesn't have gum, or, it's just, or added oils, which I'm trying to, like, whatever. It's just like, so I'm over here pressing my own organic masa. Like,
wow, that's like really impressive.
I mean, I want corn tortillas, so I want to make some freaking chips. I'm going to make some chips. It's not always like, I'll find I'll take the unorganic one sometimes, but that's good to know. If we can find like Mexican ones, that's
Yeah.
possibly safer for us. Okay, so did this lawsuit that the dude won?
Hmm.
Didn't he
Yeah,
pass away?
he won. So the first three cases that were tried by the original legal team, all three were winners. And because it was so incredibly corrupt what they had done, I mean, the toxicologists in Monsanto most definitely know that this is a carcinogen that they're selling. Um, all these internal documents that the lawyers released showed just how crooked it all was. And so for a jury to watch it, they're like, well, yeah, clearly. I mean, they did an excellent job arguing it, but I mean, the evidence is horrible. Now, what's unfortunate though, so then Bayer's stock price tanked after those three wins.
Mm-hmm.
And like, there was worry for the company and everything. So they'd acquired Monsanto, what a liability. And unfortunately, then so they had this huge multi-billion, like over $10 billion settlement for all these non-Hodgkin's lymphoma cases. And then, so it's so aggravating because they were settling a bunch of the cases, like thousands of cases that they knew that they couldn't win in court. But there are a few people that have sued Bayer and they've said, oh, I have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma from glyphosate exposure. But it's very clear when you look at the case itself that that's probably not why they got non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Mm-hmm.
So they're just weak cases. And Bayer decided, okay, well, we're going to keep those going. So you have these lawyers that have tagged on that weren't the original team, but they're like, oh, good, easy way to make money. So they're representing these plaintiffs with bad cases up against these superstar lawyers that Bayer has hired. And so now Bayer's like, we've won 5 versus their 3. So it shows it doesn't cause cancer. Meanwhile, it's just they were bad cases with bad lawyers. And so, of course, Bayer won. So that's hard because for a while, a lot of like people like me and activists in this, we were riding so high on the fact that this was going to be the end of glyphosate and that the EPA was going to have to say, okay, actually, we have been accommodating industry. We know it causes cancer. The EPA's own internal people say it causes cancer. It's just like, the power of those lobbies and the control and the money that pharma and ag chem have over those politicians will not allow the EPA to say this causes cancer, even though since like, the 1980s, it clearly has.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just so sad to think that people can sleep at night knowing that they are giving people cancer and ruining their lives. I just can't fathom it.
Yeah.
And Bayer has this phenomenal product. It's like their main product now that treats non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Of course. Wow. Isn't that so ironic?
Can you believe that? Just really, who would know? Who would guess?
I don't know. So I thought that the guy that actually won the lawsuit
Johnson
passed away, but he didn't.
No, he didn't. Yeah.
He did?
No, he didn't. No,
he didn't. Right. Okay. So
he's still sick. He's still really sick, but he's still kicking.
Okay. Okay. So, okay. We've learned about glyphosate. We've learned how to avoid it. I am an advocate. I like to lobby. I never thought that would come out of my mouth because I'm just not a verbally political person, really. But I like to lobby and for things that I feel super passionate about. And like, so in the last decade, I've been part of lobbying for better personal care product laws, which by the way, now I'm thinking about all the glyphosate that's potentially in personal care products. Just I don't know, like,
yeah,
we got to be aware of that, anyways, corn-based things. And if there's any gluten, which I know a lot of people that have gluten sensitivity, they're like, do certain products have gluten, like skincare, cosmetics, like these are things that we should be aware of. But I'm sure that there's, glyphosate showing up in personal care as well.
I'm sure there must be. Yeah. I mean, I don't know that anyone's really been studying it actively.
Yeah. So that's interesting to just kind of think about. But I've been part of like helping to get some laws passed in terms of the standards of personal care, because there's literally virtually no regulation on the chemicals that we're exposed to in our personal care products. And there has been like 10 laws passed thanks to like a valiant effort of passionate individuals that are trying to
Like
get
recently, right? Isn't there something kind of recent?
well yeah, over the last 10 years there's been and there's been some push through for like for the PFAS, like getting forever chemicals out of personal care. There's been a little, yeah, more activity in the last several years than there has been over the last 10. But, there's been, for certain states, like, oh, we're going to take this specific chemical out of children's products by 2025, like in state of Oregon, or, like, is there anything happening, since you're so submerged with this, like on a state level? Like, are any particular states pushing for better, like, are trying to get glyphosate banned? I mean, is this just way too big of a monster that type of like fighting even goes anywhere?
Yeah, no, from what I know, it is too big.
Yeah.
Where I am seeing some, and which is hopeful because passionate people can do something about it, but cities are banning it. There are cities that are banning it from public places. And so that means that the
Wow.
schools and the parks are no longer using it. There was so horrible in a local town near me. There was a cancer pocket among teenage girls. And it turned out that it was at the fields that they were playing soccer, that there was tons of glyphosate being sprayed. And one recently passed actually, and it's just unspeakable. And anyway, this group of moms went in, and I went with them to City Hall to just help support, and went back and back and back until finally now they're a fully organic city in terms of like what chemicals that they use on parks and schools. And so think of all the lives that are saved with that. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
And so I do think that there's a lot of power locally as a first step. And in terms of larger scale things, I've been involved in like a lot of different petitions and a lot of different movements. And it's like, and I worked some with Moms Across America. I'm on their board, and we went to the EPA 2 times, and we argued and showed all the evidence to the Office of Pesticide Protection, and Office of Pesticide OPP, and argued our points. And then they said, no, it's all anecdotal, like that evidence doesn't mean anything. And so you get this feeling you're in DC and you just see this wall where nothing's going to change there.
Yeah.
But the Farm Bill is coming up, which I'm sure you are aware of, in 2023. And there's a lot of chitter chatter around that. The Kiss the Ground team, Finian Makepeace, who's there, and he now has started Regenerate America. And that team, I think, is getting farther than I've seen other groups, including organic consumers, get in terms of getting actual regenerative farmers in front of Congress people to say, this is why we have to do chemical-free farming and the soil health and all those things that come with it. So I'm excited to see that. Right now, there's a petition actually at Regenerate America that they're very excited about. So hopefully that's something to go and check out. But once again, if you want to make the biggest impact, I think it's starting at your local city and just trying to get it off of surfaces. And then, of course, using your consumer power when you're buying food at the market, because that really sends a message to the food companies. Like, the food companies actually do know that there's a huge demand now for organic, or at least glyphosate-free. And General Mills clearly has known it for a long time,
Yeah.
So just the more the buzz there is, the more the consumer product companies are going to have to respond. And so that makes me really excited.
Yeah. Okay. So we also need to just make sure that we're not spraying our yards with this anymore.
Oh my gosh.
Guys, everybody who's listening, I have so many friends. I have so many people that are part of your, like, I mean, talk about local, go to your local HOA president. Okay. If you're in a neighborhood on a golf course, it is likely covered in glyphosate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, I contacted, just because it's local and my nephew plays on it, the Stanford golf course. And I was like, you need to stop spraying this. I mean, I'm sure there are all kinds of different things there, but and he said, oh, I'll put you in touch with the people at UC Davis, and they'll tell you about how safe it is. And meanwhile, UC Davis is one of the most bought off universities by agricultural chemical companies.
Oh,
oh, okay, well, that's not going to do much.
No.
I know what their answer will be,
Yeah. Oh my God. Okay.
But yes, you're so right. Just stop spraying it. And you know what? If you have pets or you like pets,
Yes,
they are dying from this.
They are.
It's
Yeah.
expected over 50% of dogs are going to get cancer by the time that they die, and likely die of it. And it goes right up through their little paws, just in
Yeah.
the same way that these lawsuits do. Like with Lee Johnson, he had dermal exposure to it. It went through his skin. It cuts through the skin, and then it goes right into the bloodstream and into the bone. So that happens with the dogs too. Each time they're walking on these surfaces, it goes right up through their little paws, and it doesn't disappear until rain comes. So it's still living on those surfaces, even though they claim, oh, it's safe to go out. You know, I don't know what they say on the bottle. It might be like 20 minutes later, go ahead and it's fine. It's absolutely not. It's all still sitting there. It's a carcinogen.
Yeah. And that brings me to the point that this is a persistent chemical that lands inside of mammals and fish and all of the waterways, and I'm sure it's everywhere, guys. But you know, here that we talk about eating plants. I told you that, like, we know how to avoid glyphosate on plants, but if you're consuming animal products still, we need to talk about that so that you can understand how to make better and safer choices for your family. So grass-fed, not sprayed grass. Ask your farmer.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Pasture, organic pasture raised.
Organic pasture raised. There we go.
Organic pasture raised. Because
it bioaccumulates in their bodies.
It bioaccumulates, and people, I mean, factory farms are terrible enough, you guys.
Oh
like,
my God.
Factory farms, everybody agrees. Factory farms suck, no matter if you're omnivorous or herbivorous. Okay. Like, they suck. They're horrible for the planet. They're horrible for the animals, but they're horrible for you. These meats and these chickens and these, they are being fed genetically modified, glyphosate drenched food. It's getting into your food. And so this is why it's so important to support your local farmer. Ask your local farmer how your food is grown and how your food is raised. Imperative.
Oh my gosh, so true.
So those are huge takeaways today. And then another huge takeaway is to stop spraying the weed killers on your lawn. That was one of the hardest things to convince my husband to do. You guys, we live in a neighborhood that has an HOA. Okay. Like, it's not super strict, but like, we are the ones that have dandelions growing all over the yard. And I'm sorry, but I didn't want to poison my dogs when I found out about this like a decade ago. I didn't want to poison my food that I was growing in my backyard. And I didn't want to poison the water, the pond that's right off of our thing that literally is down at the bottom of a hill.
Oh my gosh.
All of our neighbors are, you know, all of their stuff is just the glyphosate is just
running off the water.
Like, you guys, we have to be aware. And this is everywhere. Okay. So Kelly, your work is so important. Like, you can't stop. We appreciate you very much. I hope that this brings incredible awareness. Do you have anything else that you want to add?
Let's see. I guess, you know, I would love people. I'm really, really open to collaboration. And if a thing that I think about every single day is the fact that one of the reasons why we are where we are is because the PR machine that comes from big ag is so huge, like supporting these chemicals and the need for these chemicals in order to feed the world. And that's just a made up lie from PR firms that are paid. And so this overwhelming PR approach is really hindering human safety and animal safety. And I would love to have a counter PR movement that could be equally as strong and maybe equally as exposed. And that's one of the reasons why actually I named my website now as glyphosate-free.com, because what the opposition does, for example, there's a website called GMO Answers, and that's paid for by Bayer and Syngenta and the chemical companies, and it looks independent. And so if someone's worried about GMOs, you're going to land on that on Google, and you're going to feel a lot better when you see these paid scientists say how safe all of this is. And so it's like going up against those things and just creating greater awareness that most of this, if it doesn't sound right, like chemicals just are not good. Like pesticide or side means kill. Pesticide, herbicide, it means kill. That means us too. We're in the same boat as these plants and these animals. So, with that, I'm just so happy you had me on, because it's one more opportunity to talk about this, and you are bringing good attention to these things.
You're making me want to make this once I roll this podcast out. Sorry about my dog in the background. Once I roll this podcast out, I almost want to put some paid ads on this and slap it up on like Facebook. I'll probably get banned from it though if I have glyphosate in the title. So, I mean, we sell elderberry syrup and we can't even do that.
Oh no.
Yeah. So anyways, yeah. Thank you for bringing awareness. Thank you for putting that out there, that you're open to collaborations. You never know what might come back to you. And I have one more question. I ask everybody this question, and I would love to know what your viewpoint is on it. What does holistic living mean to you?
Oh, holistic living. So that's been quite the journey, because I was not living holistically for a long time, and it landed me sick, and my kids actually. So for me, holistic living is, number one, surrounding myself with as much nature as I possibly can. Mm-hmm. So like you, I have all kinds of houseplants around me. Mm-hmm. I try and be out in nature. I've now changed my front grass to being a garden that I spend a lot of time in, and I grow veggies and I grow fruits. And that alone has made me feel so much more connected to myself and the planet and our ecosystem. I love that. Mm-hmm. And outside of that, it's like I think maybe because I have dogs and I really love animals, and now I'm obsessed with butterflies because glyphosate killed off a lot of them, but now they're coming back. So once again, there's just so much nature involved. And I also now I'm meditating a lot, and I love that. I love that connection to things that are greater than me. And it's just amazing, that feeling that you can get when you feel more inclusive in this ecosystem that we're all supposed to be a part of by design. And it gives me so much comfort. And so for me, that's holistic living, even more than, eating organically.
Oh, I love that. That's so good. Okay. Thank you so much, Kelly, for sharing your story and sharing your work and exposing the truth. Really appreciate your time, and take care.
Thank you.